When you gaze upon stars, what thoughts arise? We emerged within the universe. What remains concealed is incredibly vast, beyond our comprehension. From where did everything originate? Numerous questions concerning the cosmos exist, some of which might perplex children, yet confound any adult. Contemporary science appears to have provided responses, if not to all inquiries, then certainly to the majority. Nevertheless, within our solar system and our cosmic neighborhood, planet Earth, abundant mysteries and anomalies persist. In this examination, we shall present several such remarkable facts. Additionally, at this release's conclusion, a small bonus awaits. Therefore, let us proceed. Can you envision that our solar system's structure results from global catastrophe, or that it deviates from natural laws in ways that surpass mere coincidence? Currently, we observe our solar systems representing the most diverse astronomical collection. Over the past 4 years, thanks to the Kepler Space Telescope, we discovered that galaxies contain numerous planets. However, the most intriguing revelation for us remains that all these planets bear no resemblance to our solar system. This fact exemplifies the uniqueness of the Kepler 442 planetary system. The distinction between the arrangement of planets around this Kepler system's star and our own solar system becomes immediately apparent. At the Kepler mission's beginning in 2009, we assumed most exoplanetary systems would be constructed like ours. Small rocky planets positioned closer to the center, massive gaseous giants in the middle, and leading frozen bodies on the periphery. However, everything proved far more complex. Kepler discovered hot Jupiters, enormous gas giants that nearly graze their stellar systems. Among more than 7,000 star systems, not one resembles ours. What troubles scientists and astronomers worldwide? Let us begin with astronomy professor Frederick Razio. Planetary orbital shapes are elongated, not circular. Planets exist where we don't expect to find them. Many Jupiter-like planetary giants, known as hot Jupiters, orbit so close to stars that they complete rotations within several days. Such turbulent histories leave minimal opportunity for forming calm solar systems like ours, and our models confirm this. In this context, the NICE model attempts explaining why our solar system was constructed following the principle of largest planets positioned far from our Sun. Within our nearby solar vicinity sits small Mercury, while giant Jupiter and Saturn's orbits lie distant from Earth. Scientific models exist based on such anomalous positioning. Yet practically observing telescopes reveals that counterparts remain undiscovered. This fact, familiar to many from school education, states that distances from the Sun to planets are determined by the simplest parameters expressed in this complex formula, where n represents the planet's number and art equals the distance from the planet in astronomical units. Simultaneously, 1 astronomical unit equals the distance from Earth to the Sun, meaning to calculate any planet's distance from the Sun, you must know Earth's distance from the Sun. It seems strange that throughout solar systems, namely Earth alone, this specific planet plays such a crucial role in this relationship. Actually, one version explains everything. The famous philosopher and futurist Nick Bostrom published work in 2003 titled, "Are You Living in a Computer Simulation?" In this paper, he suggested our world represents virtual reality created by some advanced civilization. With computer technology development, increasing numbers of scientists begin seriously discussing and seeking evidence supporting our world's simulation. Everyone has heard about Elon Musk, who remains convinced that everything surrounding us constitutes virtual reality. According to many specialists' estimates, somewhere around 2050 to 2100, we can easily obtain computers millions of times more powerful than today's. Through this advancement, we can create virtual worlds so realistic that their characters will possess consciousness yet fail to understand they exist within simulation. If humanity steadily progresses toward creating virtual reality themselves, then it's reasonable to assume other civilizations already accomplish this, and we represent part of this computer reality. Scientists believe that 99% of the universe consists of unknown matter, still called dark energy or dark matter. They're termed dark not because they lack light, but because the universe reveals practically nothing about their nature. We understand only 1% of the universe, so how can we claim 100% certainty about reality? If all these solar system anomalies center on Earth, perhaps this proves our world represents simulation. We don't notice our world's virtuality exactly as we don't notice the panda drawn between columns in this picture. Let's return to that 1% of the observable universe. Strange phenomena called orbital resonances exist. This represents a phenomenon when two or more celestial bodies' rotation periods maintain simple integer ratios. Consequently, these bodies periodically position themselves at specific points along their orbits. What does this mean? Senior scientist Sergei Izev from the Solar Terrestrial Physics Institute, candidate of Physical Mathematical Sciences, explains. It's known that Mercury's orbital period relative to Earth equals precisely 2/3. This synchronization is maintained by country according to Leonid Xanthomality. Saturn's orbit maintains 2/5 resonance relative to Jupiter. The solar system's structure, judging by all evidence, centers on Jupiter because planetary parameters align with its orbital relationships. However, Jupiter's formation at its current orbit represents a somewhat incredible phenomenon. Despite numerous models, the existing resonance properties of our solar system can only be explained through artificial intervention models. More detailed resonance information appears in our dedicated release about sound. Let us continue. Mercury's movement synchronizes with Earth's movement. Periodically, Mercury positions itself in inferior conjunction, the position when Earth, Mercury, and Sun align on one straight line. Inferior conjunction repeats every 116 days, coinciding with 2 complete Mercury rotations around its axis, ensuring Earth always faces the same side. Our neighbor Venus also contains numerous unresolved mysteries. Why does it lack magnetic field and atmospheric radiation? Why doesn't water from this hot, heavy planet escape into the atmosphere as occurred on Earth? Why doesn't Venus rotate eastward like all planets, but westward instead? Perhaps it flipped upside down so its north pole became southern, or someone altered its orbit to rotate in the opposite direction. Venus approaches Earth's minimum distance, indicated as inferior conjunction, every 584 days. At this point, Venus always presents the same side toward Earth. This phenomenon can be explained from classical mechanics perspective. Here's visualization of internal planetary movement between Earth and Venus. These terms describe this amazing planetary dance, resembling friendship between celestial bodies. Thus, Venus and Mercury demonstrate so-called second-kind resonance. They're oriented not toward the Sun, but toward Earth. From everything stated, one draws a completely paradoxical conclusion. The 4 planets closest to the Sun were initially designed to organize conditions for life. And the planetary giants that in other systems never occupy final positions, they weren't accidentally positioned as the mechanism's engine for our solar system's formation. Such planetary engineering suggests it's time to examine Mars. First, a small conspiracy theory. Relatively recently, hidden facts emerged regarding NASA's falsification concerning Mars's actual color relative to Earth. The original photographs showed Mars very similar to Earth. One version suggests all Mars photography was conducted on Earth. Another perspective claims Mars's atmosphere resembles Earth's much more closely than expected. Several other small Mars details indicate this planet's conditions weren't so different from Earth's. Then came a catalyst that destroyed the planet's orbital and climatic characteristics. Its elliptical, comet-like orbit unexpectedly brings it close to the Sun, then carries it far away. The planet's rotation speed is much slower than expected. Mars has almost no magnetic field. Along its rotation axis, it experiences wild fluctuations approaching the Sun. A huge majority of Martian craters exceed statistical probability for impacts into the southern hemisphere from the so-called late heavy bombardment period. The northern hemisphere contains far fewer craters and is represented by flat plains positioned 3 kilometers below the southern hemisphere's height. The boundary dividing north and south is physically marked on Mars's surface through a hemisphere division line. This unique feature runs around the planet as a huge oval region intersecting the equator at approximately 35 degrees. Mars's unique characteristic is a complex system of canyons on its surface, 7 kilometers deep and 4,000 kilometers long. Most scientists still claim that Phobos is an asteroid caught in Mars's gravitational field. However, this theory, according to Virginia Polytechnic University professor Fred Singer, contradicts physics laws and cannot explain why this captured object moves around the planet in an almost circular equatorial orbit. Additionally, Phobos's rotation around its axis coincides with its rotation around Mars. But there's a planet that experienced even worse fortune than Mars. In the simple formula discovered in the 18th century by astronomers Titius and Bode, a sequence was included and named after them. However, this sequence contained one empty place, a missing planet that should have existed between Mars and Jupiter, at approximately 2.8 astronomical units from the Sun. But its place was occupied by asteroids, suggesting the planet was destroyed rather than never existing. The hypothetical planet was called Phaeton. If you apply Earth's gravitational laws and lunar tidal force formulas at the moment when the Moon passes between Earth and Sun, for example during solar eclipse, the gravitational tidal forces coincide with orbital forces. Known celestial bodies constantly maintain synchronous rotation around their planet. Earth's moon, Mars's moons, Saturn's moons, except Hyperion and Uranus, Neptune's moons except Nereid and Pluto. Jupiter's system demonstrates such rotation among a significant portion of its satellites, including all Galilean moons. While this exists only in fantastic literature, someone appears to have already engaged in constructing real star systems. Or perhaps it was simply easier to organize simulation of virtual universe. What do you think about this matter? On April 10, 2019, astrophysics groups from the Event Horizon Telescope project, representing the planet's complete network of radio telescopes, presented the first photograph of a black hole. But could it be that this represents something else? Could it be that black holes are merely scientific dogma that nobody has ever proven practically? Because nobody has returned from black holes to tell us how it actually was. In serious cases, we encounter global concepts about relativity theory, about gravity, and who knows what else, so perhaps black holes represent the same phenomenon. What constitutes a black hole? This term was coined by American physicist John Archibald Wheeler. He first used this term at a conference 50 years ago. Black hole theory began forming within general relativity's framework. Notably, Albert Einstein himself didn't believe in black holes' existence. Since black holes aren't visible beforehand, they can only be detected through electromagnetic waves, radiation, and effects on surrounding space. In the film published by the Event Horizon Telescope International Project, the image shows the so-called black hole's event horizon, the boundary of the region beyond which gravitational pull and the surrounding accretion disk. The light symmetry that the dark hole creates behind itself. Even recognized astrophysics experts acknowledge they don't know how to properly illustrate black holes. All these pictures they show represent simulations. The only authentic element is the image from the telescope. Because the telescope's quality isn't due to mobility, but because the object lies approximately 55 million light-years away. It was calculated that to see the massive black hole in M87 Galaxy's center requires building a telescope with Earth's diameter. But no such dish exists, so radio interferometry was employed, a technique increasing apparatus resolution. You can take two small telescopes, separate them by 100 meters, and if they work together, their resolution will be equivalent to a large dish. The Event Horizon Telescope represents not just an interferometer, but a radio interferometer with maximum baseline, with telescopes located on different continents. Such a system has resolution equivalent to an Earth-sized telescope. The system's telescopes were equipped with precise atomic clocks, equipment for high-speed data processing, or even atomic detectors, as in the South Pole Telescope's case. Atomic clocks were needed for data synchronization because telescopes aren't connected through physical networks. Data on hard drives, generally 5 petabytes, transferred by aircraft to processing centers. But the virtual telescope cannot simply collect signals as would a real telescope with planetary dimensions. Therefore, Earth's rotation from different points was added to the process, covering increasingly more of the virtual telescope. However, that's not all. Furthermore, received data underwent several stages of processing through specially created algorithms. Generally, hundreds of scientists' work produce such results. This represents a massive black hole, and there are stellar black holes, into which massive stars transform during their evolution process. For billions of years, gas temperature changes within them, leading to nuclear destruction. Then stellar collapse occurs. Typical stellar mass black holes have 30-kilometer radius and density exceeding 200 million tons per cubic centimeter. For comparison, so Earth becomes a black hole, its radius should be 9 millimeters. In our galaxy center, there's also a black hole, Sagittarius A star. Its mass is 4 million times our Sun's mass. Size is 25 million kilometers, approximately 17 solar diameters. Similar scales raise questions about whether black holes govern our galaxy's data. The basis for such positioning isn't merely fantasy. Several years ago, scientists reported about galaxy W2246-0526, located 12.5 billion light-years from our planet. According to astronomers' descriptions, a massive black hole in the galaxy's center gradually devours its parts, and this process's radiation result spreads in all directions throughout the giant galaxy. The transparent black galaxy shines brighter than 300 trillion suns. But we can relax, our native galaxy isn't threatened by anything similar. In the foreseeable future, most Milky Way objects, including our solar system, remain too distant from black holes for gravitational influence. Additionally, our black hole doesn't consume all material like a cosmic vacuum cleaner, only providing gravitational anchor for star groups orbiting around it, as the Sun does for planets. In short, even if we never fall into a black hole, it won't threaten us. The gravitational field around black holes is very strong and uneven, so all objects approaching them experience tidal gravitational forces. This phenomenon is described by Stephen Hawking's theory. Stephen Hawking termed this phenomenon spaghettification. If you describe spaghettification from a cosmonaut's perspective who is flying toward a black hole feet first, then the gravitational field will pull his legs more than his head, and the body will stretch through the body, turning it into elementary particles. From the side, you can observe falling into a black hole as it appears. The second view is that, as you can see, the person approaching the black hole becomes gradually frozen, and everything will be restored. After this object will become increasingly redshifted. The red color finally just disappears. What exists inside? The answer to this question is unclear, and we will never obtain it. In other words, scientists maintain the opinion that black holes are used to preserve physics laws. According to one of the most captivating hypotheses about the country during continental drift around black holes, it states that in this reality, a tunnel forms that can be a portal to another universe, or so-called wormhole. But if this represents a tunnel, what other words can be called an entrance or portal? Only what can be its mass. Imagine for a moment that actually black holes don't have any mass formed by matter and are channels of multidimensional space. These channels connect together with the force of such space, which fantastic authors love calling parallel dimensions. Although they're unlikely to be found together with something parallel or perpendicular. If the black hole is a channel, then physical dense material flows from our space below, Then, when attracted to material from the space universe above ours, stars form, which for the donor universe look like black holes. And our black holes are stars for the lower space. Amazing pictures of truth. According to the multidimensional universe concept, our universe is only a space-like layer in a huge cosmic structure. According to the concept of matter birth from the 8 such layers in the world. But in matter birth and creation, our only 6th first mother. Where our matter birth connects with upper matter birth, we get matter birth in the form of light stars. So-called nuclear reactions, that is, matter birth occurs in the form of star burning. And where our space connects with lower quality space, in this place, material is already attracted by us in the form of black holes. Why black holes pull everything that doesn't hit the floor, although they don't have much mass themselves. This is just an entrance to the channel through which physical dense material from our space universe is attracted to the lower space universe. All these winds, flows, various rays coming from black holes are just the sealing of their first materials. This is the picture of buildings where every space universe through stars gets material and through black holes loses it. At the same time, third-dimensional material is destroyed between different worlds. Planet Earth. It seems we know everything about it, but in this set there will be such facts after which star engineers like Ridley Scott will seem just to be writers. Let's start. In biochemical exchange, Earth's really important role is played by a chemical element that our planet has too little of. That is, almost none. This is molybdenum. The most likely explanation of this phenomenon is that primitive life was born in another world, on another planet where molybdenum was much more abundant than on Earth, and where its role, based on importance for our planet's conditions, was more justified. Additionally, American scientist Schroeder, as a result of extensive research, discovered a whole series of chemical elements in which Earth is also deficient, but even relatively large increases in soil dosage not only don't bring harm, as usually happens, but even enhance life processes. These elements apply to nickel, cobalt, and aforementioned molybdenum. It's worth adding that human body composition includes the most diverse chemical substances, which are present in the body as a whole organism. However, among vital ones, only 14 were known, among which there's mentioned nickel, cobalt, molybdenum, and cobalt, selenium, and thorium. Such chemical composition range on our planet is completely different percentage distribution and selection of elements necessary for existence of living synonyms of life. It looks unnatural. But if we take the hypothesis that terrestrial life, everything will be in its place. Part of terrestrial plants maximally demand energy from the sun, but maximum demand for sun's energy occurs in other parts of the spectrum than this star provides. They appear as if they had passed the evolutionary development path on planets of other stars, maximum stars that radiate at higher frequencies, which correspond to, for example, the blue series. According to this graph, Earth's nature should not be found near stars, which, according to Hertzsprung, the sun belongs to the class of yellow stars, white and bright subgiants, while the sun belongs to the class of yellow stars. This can be said that certain life forms of animals were adapted to Earth's climatic forest conditions from other planets. Some food cultures are not as delicious as in the cruiser example. It cannot be separated from sea and wild, for its separation is necessary for reasonable existence. According to myths, this grain has been given to people who have lost their existence without divine creatures, which Earth considered as gods. Here's what George Wells Beadle, an American geneticist who won the Nobel Prize in Physiology and Medicine in 1958, said. In the Caucasus, the Russian Nemestian Spanish genetic cocktail, and the native of this plant, it is impossible to find. Wheat is also very, very strange. Russian scientist Nikolai Vavilov, as a result of global research of various wheat types, established 3 independent, friend-separated places of this culture's origin. Syria and Palestine were the birthplace of single-grain and double-grain wheat. Ethiopia was the birthplace of hard wheat, and the Himalayas, the center of soft wheat varieties' origin. As Vavilov wrote in his work, several remarks on the problem of wheat origin. The eighth striking fact is that in regions where maximum primitive variety in the form of 28-chromosome cultural wheat exists, it is completely based on all basic wild wheat varieties. This fact leads to the need to revise our ideas about the process of cultural wheat journey. At the same time, the difference between wild and cultivated wheat is huge. Single-grain wheat is considered 14 chromosome. Wild and hard wheat have 28 chromosomes. Soft wheat has 42 chromosomes. For separation and multiplication of chromosome sets, we need methods of preventing primitive selection in the form of naked grain mixture. At the same time, early archaeological finds already found ready-made images of cultivated wheat. Various images of cultivated wheat varieties. The analogous picture of vast cultural variety spread regions and their wild forms is still observed in the whole area of rice cultivation. This is always a priority of those or other gods. In Mexico, maize was brought by great god Quetzalcoatl. God Viracocha gave grain to Peruvian peoples. And cereals gave culture to Ethiopian peoples, that is, ancient Egypt. Sumerians received grain from gods Enki and Enlil. Gods who came from the heavens brought grain to terrestrial peoples. Chinese helped in their own land with heavenly gods, and in Tibet, young men brought grain fruits unknown to the land. Most ancient data from pre-flood legends show God's appearance and behavior differed less from ordinary people than their possibilities and abilities were incomparably higher. Ancient nations of the planet never considered Earth as their homeland. They either trace their origin from heavenly gods or hold myths about direct migration of their ancestors from other worlds. This is presentation of more early and ancient sources. Even in the Bible, the myth of knowledge of the first people of the heavenly kingdom and the creation of their land, where at that moment there was already a whole life in the form of animal plants. In ancient texts, there is information that was clearly brought to the planet of the cause. Clay tablets found in Nippur's temple library, witnesses who lived 5,000 years ago in the world. It was known that the star precession cycle completes every 25,920 years. This is the so-called period of Earth's precession. In another end of the Earth's astronomical texts of ancient Maya, the figure matches this cipher. From where could ancient nations obtain the exact period of precession? In all history of today's humanity, it has aged less than half of this cycle. Ancient Maya not only knew the very understanding of the year, but its accurate duration. They considered it equal to 365.242199 days. According to the Gregorian calendar we use today, the year's duration is 365.2425 days. Only in the last 50 years, with help of the most recent astronomical devices, was its practical duration established, 365.2498 days of local population. Such high accuracy is simply impossible to achieve for primitive civilization on the planet. There is no answer to the question of ancient wisdom and Egypt in modern science. There were certain ideas about magnetic planets. Another concept of planets, ancient Indian sources, and the land was divided into 4 yugas for 0.32 billion years, so that it is close to modern data. Written tablets of the Middle Ages, made more than 3,000 years ago, confirming that the radius with Earth's heat is 6,310.5 kilometers. It was already considered that it equals 6,371 kilometers. This is significant difference in the 20th century and is explained by Earth's rotation. Ancient Sanskrit texts, Surya Siddhanta and Great Siddhanta, share the essence of the 60th century. The Kala was born in our 24 minutes, and in its turn, it was divided into 60 Vikala. The further 60 disturbing the further 60 destruction of funds for time resulted in Pratatatpa, Vitatpa, and ultimately the line of numbers, which equals 1.300 millions. Why did such time measurement become popular? In the past, each civilization had its own calendar system, ancient beginning of some real events. But in the day of the earthquake, the end of the migration of peoples. In ancient human history, really have surprising coincidence of initial points of various calendar era existence. Ancient Egyptian calendar cycle, Sothis period, counted 1,460 years. One of these cycles was completed in 1322 before our era. If from this year 7 cycles ago, then it will be 11,542 years before our era. Ancient Syrian calendar consisted of lunar cycles by 1805 years. Finally, one of these cycles reached 1,712 years before our era. If you count 6 cycles back, you will get 11,542 years before our era. Ancient Indian lunar solar cycle was 2,850 years. The Iron Age, Kali Yuga, in which we are now living, started in 3102 years before our era. From this data, for cycles of the year, we will get 11,652 years before our era. In ancient Maya, in Central America, the first calendar era will be 3,373 years before our era, and the calendar cycle will be 2,760 years. Counting 4 cycles back, we get 11,413 years before our era. As a result, the beginning point of a worldwide catastrophe for all 4 calendars was a success. However, the famous catastrophe was known in ancient India and the Middle East, Central America, and Egypt. Arcadians call it the inhabitants of the pre-flood Daelans, so as the land of the Daelans was still not in the sky. This myth confirmed the security of the Alexandrian library and Apollonius of Rhodes. The famous letter of Apollonius was written that it was not always on Earth, but the blue-eyed moon. And during Sumerian era, even clay tablets were found where events later occurred when the moon appeared in the sky. The version of human origin today pretty much exists, but 3 of them are most popular. This is evolution theory, creationism, and extraplanetary or cosmic version. Let's look at facts that allow phenomenon to look at the common point of view of human origin. It consists of aquatic theory or theory of water without nuclear evolution. As savanna theory, it is only a hypothesis, but nevertheless, some development of a person. According to her, the chosen one from jungle, our ancestors went to the savanna, to the sea, river, lake, a shopping district. Here are some peculiarities of a person associated with the aquatic theory. Modern people can do research on transport control of the breathing process. Moreover, people have such a name, the reflex of the breathing path when water is loaded. This reflex automatically works when water comes to the face. The breathing hole is not divided from water, the larynx. The same structure has only water molecules, for example, the seal. It allows you to control breath, hold it, and breathe. Life is not necessary human organism in consumption of iodine and sodium chloride. Salt, you have found in sea products. The absence of iodine in consumption products leads to thyroid disease. The ability to full-fledged food is exclusively for sea. For example, Japanese cuisine. The number of large membranes between fingers. About 7% of people are born with membranes between fingers and legs. A person has membrane between big and index fingers. There is no direct aid. The number of premature male-born children, also characteristic for marine mammals, but not without genes. The number of positive reflexes born, which is the anatomy of modern person. Big volume of wild animals on the silent forests, the only character for person. This may be explained by the fact that milk should be kept warm in cold water. The most obvious is the silent forest small and without wild animals. All is good, but maybe the aquatic ape didn't evolve on this planet. Or at all it doesn't matter where he did evolve. The most ambitious is the interpretation that representatives of highly developed civilizations, which were similar to people, they came from the wrong land for their own purposes which needed a little effort. God Enki offered to create man to translate it to his body. One of God's was a priest of death. He took his genetic material and, as sources said, his blood was mixed with clay, the material of matter. And here's what's interesting. Results of analysis of mitochondrial DNA showed that all people, descendants of one woman, who lived about 200,000 years ago, so-called mitochondrial Eva. The latest research by scientists revealed that in human body there are 223 genes not meeting in other animals. The first, or the blue blood created in the early 20th century, is all without a key of people. Perhaps in the unremarkable time, this term, blue blood, was used in the bookmark of the mind. And this term was applied to the brain representatives. The blood of a person, as most animals, red color, due to the fact that in hemoglobin, breathing pigment, there are iron atoms, but there are organisms in which in place of hemoglobin, hemocyanin, based on copper. The blood of such creatures is blue color. It is some kind of insects and mollusks. On one version, on the planet where gods were brought, copper is more than iron. And evolution there went such way that for transport of gases and fuel substances, blood was used, namely the medium. Temperature of body 36.6 degrees Celsius, also not accidentally, as exactly at this temperature, water has minimal heat capacity. Let's go back to the graph. To support water temperature in the body on mark 36.6 degrees Celsius, you need least amount of heat, that is at other temperatures. So, less fuel in form of food, less load on blanket and body system. This temperature is low for destruction of viruses, but for this, there is mechanism to lift temperature to 40 degrees and higher when many bacteria and viruses die. A person is not created for life in winter conditions. What witness is his physiological non-sensitivity? Specialists notice small amount of such answers. Why, for example, person's evolution was constantly given to head hair. To survive? But this is absurd. Imagine child ancient person who has brain. Their hair is mixed up. Look, move, run. Explain evolution of constant and pretty fast hair growth is impossible. Because if it happens to be anomaly, like for example this mess, then city loses its whole body. Solution of birth for women is also much more difficult than for most animals. Period of helplessness of born person is normal long compared to same animal world. More in back and other violations of locomotor apparatus connected with bad adaptation of skeletons in current planetary conditions. Person breaks constantly involved. Number of resonances in smoke is more or less than their parameters. Also, breathing of large-scale tests is so much that body is clearly not enough for all changes of process. Biological body was calculated by other mass-atmospheric ratio in atmosphere. How can we say about breathing? So-called circadian rhythm of person is not rather day. People, along with current situation, are completely isolated in wake of ologenes. For example, it is possible to go to most long-term cycle, 26 to 32 hours. Moreover, in case of 56 hours about day-term rhythm, this mysterious peculiarity gives foundation to consider that length of day in 24 hours is not different for human body. If we reduced level and completed journey inside living cell, then saw electric engine, conveyor, assembly lines, and even following robots. According to calculations, in living cell functioned about 40 known molecular cars. They carry loads of molecular rails. They enter into number of key chemical processes. Machine from molecule produces energy for support of life. They reduce our muscles and build other molecular machines. So, for example, ADP synthase, smallest in nature biological electric motor, is only 10 nanometers. With its help, living organisms are working on adenosine triphosphate. ATP consists of adenosine, accumulating lot of energy. This is conservative energy needed for nutrition of most diverse biochemical reactions. Kinesin is linear molecular motor moving in path of wires, polymer threads. Boot of port toy can be transferred to all kinds of cargo. Mitochondria or cytoplasm use in quality of fuel of ADP. In addition, gasoline is similar to hidden stone shaft of toy man. At same time, if one of his end of engine is spent energy, ADP is spent. That other, at this time, it is freeing component for energy development. In end, There is non-essential cycle of tasks and waste energy for useful work. As research showed, kinesins are quite comfortable to step up cell with their own rope legs. Step is long, all 8 nanometers per second. It moves to giant cell distance of 800 nanometers. That is, he does 100 steps in second. Try to imagine such speed in human world, walking under drop of microtubules. Benzene brings various loads of clay. Everything seems civilization, which could create artificial forms of life. And last research confirms that it is completely real. Person can create artificial robots that in future can live and work in intercellular world. In early 90s, British scientists from University of Sheffield did first molecular knot, synthetic device in which space switch is going. For its creation, rotaxane is used. Artificial creature in which ring switch small molecule is not on linear molecule. In 2010, group of American bioengineers, Milan Stoyanovich and his colleagues created molecular robot capable to move to DNA. In course of experiment, scientists could explore how robot could make 50 steps and move to 100 nanometers. Robot, in can see, can automatically perform several commands. And after 3 years, English and Atlantic bioengineers by way, David Lee could create first molecular world on conveyor. On car, they could collect pipes, short whites. In nature, task is up of 3 barges, organelles, located in our cells. Bioengineers took basis for their cars, molecule rotoxane, and its sturdiness could be removed from separate stone suit components. If humanity could create artificial life, then why is it not available to other civilizations? And in this sense, conversation of creature is being discussed several other issues. Isn't it? Many highly developed civilizations are in universe. They are led by technologies of star-made transformation and creation of engineering weapons of forces. The remains of remains throughout universe, which it is located. Because light waves in near systems of stars change direct movement of wave, it is faring for micro and for macrocosmos. For example, in macrocosmos scale, it was understanding of nature of black holes. Black holes are area of space where parallel universe is connected and their materials are moved one by one. Similar picture is observed in microworld. Each atom, as star in microworld. Each atom's age is known in scale of macroworld, hiding space around itself. And what is harder is that higher darkness of this hiding. If atom's weight is above 200 atoms, then other atom's value is value of wall that is falling apart. Value of nuclear power. Organizations' united forces are still stronger. Power of people's population is still stronger. Physical and animal level of body scientists is increasing. Number of scientists is increasing. In microcosmos, there are a lot of large-scale molkrunk and zone of transition from physical level to level of system. These 2 processes were made to learn how to create ships that can be moved to huge distance. Main metal structure of huge organic molecules of RNK-DNK, where heavy metals are in free sciences and were created by these ships. So, new information of other stars is started. Look at this. Process of decoding of gene is much more detailed than it seems. Old decoding is completely disappeared in decoding process. And after some time it begins to appear 2 new decoders, exact copies of old ones. Decoding process of depot and decoding launches transition of material from one dimension to another, and then back, but already in another point. Bimetallic technologies give opportunity to move in millions of times faster speeds and make various manipulations on material. But technology also has limitations. It is restricted to accuracy of ships and psychological limits of living operators of these technologies. Therefore, scale of atmosphere was not as global as we wanted. Then it was solution to bring unique experiment that was created in several stages. Everything started with choice of correct stars. To make it one of planets formed world, approach to growth of life, it was necessary to have all planets inside chosen systems and move in right direction. Therefore, they had to move up to right direction to correct orbit. They also needed to add artificial satellites to calibrate endogenic-exogenic process of celestial bodies. Next stage was to form planets terraforming. This was not complete control process either. Gigantic quarries, which were formed after mastodonic works, were later mass-produced under natural landscape. Then time of formation of planets' biosphere was over. In order to create conditions necessary for normal life of biological vision was launched controlled evolution, which gradually had to be brought to desired result. We need to create suitable life for climate, so we have to force to plan warm and comfortable planet. Atmosphere began to develop very actively. Many growth and animals were hanging on new planet and gradually settled down whole territory. Their evolution and development continued to go on their way. All representatives of flora and fauna on different stages of evolution have put their own certain places. Each of them was presented with specific required form, measuring number of existing processes. Humanoid view of result of this evolution was supposed to be clear, confident, changing, in relatively clear world to take specific ecological niche with complex connections and scientific points. Creation of all scientific points of various ecosystems in various natural areas of planet, genetic pressure, non-relative, and stimulation of necessary visible organisms, all these actions were created by use of natural technology. But, of course, experiment was not experiment if everything was done without any problems. It turned out that in space of Earth, idea of creating new civilization, artificial conditions did not come to end. This powerful destructive force led to significant potential to periodically put possibility of discovery of experiment of logical conclusion. For example, on first stage of one of famous systems collapse of Earth had in poise of asteroids, and other was completely killed by atmosphere. Creation of natural cataclysm was one of main tools of our opponents. When time of creation of ecological niche was limited, genetic together with system and other and genetic systems of different planetary systems. New residents of planet were forced to close their native planet's natural zones so that adaptation could be as fast as possible. Nobody was expected to take first off sails, and they decided to take off sails to start their new planet, created and well-developed. Level of development of participants was also same. Initial plan was to evolve its own house. And smart views felt like new planet. Gradually race is developing. Japanese began their social development in these new words and did not get on their own previous experience on their own plans. In framework of experiment, impossible was long to strive for one stage of social evolution. Therefore, we actively stimulated development of way of adding to progress of technological and social constructions. For dynamic evolution process, we need to quickly establish social structures of planets. In long term of life, video is impossible. Therefore, life of living, helping of experimental planets, is quite short. But our opponents did not leave attempts to mix experiment and continued to mix process of development of planets. At level of social, we also developed destructive work. By way, creation of condition for mixing sometimes created kinetic evolution and transitions. Healthy social climate and natural cataclysm added mass darkness, creating conditions for development of new civilization of public planet. In result of social planet was born dangerous alienations. We had decision to put quarantine in our interaction with other civilizations, so as with current state of society is guaranteed by destruction itself, and it can also be seen by other smart people. We see how creation of civilization is going to develop technocratic system. And this is way threat of entire destruction as separate social structure is planned in general. But despite fact that humanity continues to be dangerous mechanistic path, it is preserved probability of leaving main valley for certain level of development. When technical means, which is limited in nature, only strength of thought of reality of transformation in space and time, control of natural processes in planetary and cosmic scale, and other. Incredible for today's consciousness of people with fact of matter and space. Key to this level is research of real laws of surrounding world, where physical world is only closed-minded process. approach to other levels. And biological body is only part of darkness of human. Thank you for watching this video. If you liked it, give it a like and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Thank you and see you in the next videos. Take care.